few months back, I looked at a controller that I thought had massive potential, but ultimately kind of fell short. It was the Machenike G6, and on paper, it had every single feature that I've ever really wanted in a pro controller, to be honest. But so little time was spent refining those features that it was kind of like Iron Man 3. Complete bullshit. They did a bit of a better job with their newest controller, the G5 Pro. Although, yet again, it's not really there yet. It still doesn't have software. It's been like 5 or 6 months. So they've released the software like 7 months later, literally like 7 months after release of the controller. It's only in Mandarin. It's available on PC and mobile, and it won't work with my controller. Wired, wireless, none of it matters. I know I sound terrible, but if they don't care enough to fucking release the controller as a complete device, I'm not gonna fucking sit here and hook my microphone up and shit. Fuck this controller. I'll be slightly brutal in this video. Machenike did send this out, so I'm gonna try not to be, well, I'm just gonna be honest. And I'll try to keep it short because the last controller was pretty similar, so I don't want to make the same review twice. So subscribe, and be sure to stick around if you enjoy the next 10 minutes of ads. Or ads. Both. Today's video is sponsored by PCBWay, who are an experienced PCB manufacturer and assembler with an array of similar services at good prices. They have great turnaround times and thousands of happy customers with over a decade of experience in the field. My samples from the service are very high quality. I'll always love the look of the PS4 USB-C boards Marius made using PCBWay. If you're interested in making your own PCB for a custom controller project of some sort, be sure to check them out at the link in the description below. Thank you so much to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. I suppose we'll start off with the good news. The subpar polling rate has somewhat been fixed. Wired and 2.4 gigahertz wireless are now more than adequate, but just like the G6, Bluetooth has one of the worst response times I've literally ever seen. Overclocking in all cases makes the response time less consistent, so I recommend you keep it stock. What else? What else? The Clicky ABXY buttons. The Clicky ABXY buttons are still here, and there's a new and improved Clicky D-pad. Stick around for that one. There was the obvious aesthetic change with the RGB, but the most important change in my opinion was the anti-stick drift Hall effect thumbsticks. Hall effect sticks are an ancient technology resurrected to be the savior of stick drift, and contrary to their last controller, this one uses K-Silver's JH16 Hall sticks as opposed to the original G5, which used Golakit's Hall sticks, which I believe were the very first to be commercially available to the public, at least on a controller. With these sticks, they've fixed the square dead zone issue, which the last one had, and the experience is a lot smoother, I will be honest, although making small adjustments is still pretty much impossible, so I'd still say these are really only for like broad stroke games, kind of like driving games. It's not necessarily something you'd want for shooters. So all of that were the majority of the upgrades. The only glaring issues I'd say this controller has is, compared to the last one, on paper, it doesn't have trigger stops, but it doesn't really matter. It has the hair trigger dead zones, which work well enough. And to be 100% honest, the rear button design is kind of shit. The 3 trigger stops on the G6 were pretty useless anyways, but the button design was really, really nice. They got it right the last time. The new ones that are pretty annoying. They're still fully remappable to any input you want, or macro if you're like kind of gay. I don't know. I mean, the 2 rear buttons on the G6 were big, spacious, easy to press. They weren't halfway sunk into the controller already. Why change the manufacturing process to make the controller slightly worse? And because of the fact that the rear buttons are too recessed into the rear faceplate, I don't always click them, so it's not the smoothest experience with my gameplay, which really sucks for someone like me who's very dependent on rear buttons for good gameplay. Alright, let's just calm the fuck down here. The D-pad was also perfectly fine on the last controller, but you know, up yours. Earlier I did say they added new switches. They're Kale switches, they're Kale green switches. They're some type of SMT micro switch rated for 5 million clicks with a supposed 0.7mm actuation distance. This sounds like an upgrade, but they always add these rubber pads to these clicky switches, so they're pretty stiff and have just as much travel distance, if not more, than normal membrane buttons. I also kind of lied about the green switches. Well, I didn't, but Machenike did. Call me colorblind. I mean, I'm American. The drinking water everywhere here is pretty much poison. But I could swear that the green switches were not on the D-pad. I could swear they were on the ABXY buttons. That's rather interesting. Y'all are a bunch of lying-ass motherfuckers. What's worse is, even though they have the same switches, the ABXY buttons have a different design with the padding, so they take a little bit more force to actuate as well. According to my measurements, about 40%. I still like the ABXY buttons. I also do like the D-pad. I just kind of think, again, it was perfectly fine last time. And this time they're kind of just lying about it. And with this controller, it's the perfect example of this being a gimmick more than anything else. The D-pad travels further than the other one, and the ABXY buttons are no better than the average membrane button. They just take more force to press now. There's not too much of a competitive advantage to something that travels that far. I mean, there is the advantage of the reliability and the clickety-clack, and I do plan on making a video discussing this further since this isn't just Machenike's problem. A lot of other controllers do this too. Some get it right though. Similar clicky switches can be found on things like the options view, home button, the FN button as well. The FN button is what you'd think. You have swappable profiles, so you can use that to swap between them on the fly. You can activate trigger dead zones or change the LED brightness, the pattern, etc. It looks like other quality of life features, like the vibration intensity, it looks like it could be changed in the software. Maybe these are the macros? I don't know. I don't speak Mandarin. It also says there's some switch-oriented features here too, like motion sensing, which it's not very great. If you want something for motion sensing, DualSense, DualShock 4, FlyDigi controllers aren't terrible. It also has NS one-button wake-up. I wonder what the NS means.
No shit.
Below this, you could see a note about the software, which apparently only has testing and button remapping abilities, and will eventually, one day, maybe a year after release, have an English version. Why even fucking bother?
You guys don't even actually understand how sick of this shit I am. I mainly say that because of the Victrix Pro BFG review, which isn't even out yet. Y'all haven't seen it, but it does this exact same shit. But the G5 is offensive in a different way. Look, I'm not saying the G5 isn't an upgrade from the G6.
But all I'm saying is like, if I had to label someone that is a cunt...
This thing is just not quite there. Again, some of the issues I complained about with their previous controller in my previous review, some of those things have been fixed either by intention or accident. Doesn't really matter. Considering the feature set in a vacuum, it's not that bad for a wireless PC controller, but there are so many competitors out there that absolutely curb stomp the shit out of this. And I have reviews on all of those controllers. Either they've come out or they're coming out. The warranty is, like the software, it's either hiding somewhere or it just doesn't exist. The website really doesn't say much, so wild guess. Listen, I do appreciate Machenike for sending this thing out, but if you're looking for something that matches this description, you know, Switch, PC, wireless, Hall effect sticks, 2 rear buttons, these. I will say, however, competition is key. We're heading in the right direction. More competition, more competitive devices meant to deliver us more performance and a more reliable experience. Not right now. We're still working out the kinks, but we're on our way though. I'd suggest ditching the dome pads with the clicky ABXY buttons. Modify the thumbsticks a little bit, not, you know, physically, I'm just saying calibrate them so they can do small movements better. I know they can because GameSters controllers do them pretty well. And restore the button layout that the old controller had because those ones were better. There you go. Yet again, Machenike is not too far off from making something I could comfortably recommend, but with the quality control issues and competitors at the same price point offering very similar features, I'd find it hard to recommend this to most people. And if I were Machenike, I'd be very happy. Most of my negative reviews are not this civilized. I have a couple coming that are going to be catastrophic and nightmarish. Very excited. Thank God this wasn't one of those times. Before I go, I'd like to say, you guys should be seeing more content on the channel soon. I've been putting some money into production hardware, so it's a little bit easier. So it's a little bit easier for me to record these videos. I've written over 15,000 words. You guys got a lot of good content coming up, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace.